Julie, let's inspire everyone to choose joy today. So, welcome to What Lights Us Up.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I created this podcast as a way to connect with others about their path to joy, and all because I created a cookbook stemming from my Italian American roots, and it brought me so much joy.
Yeah,
The journey of creating the book, sharing it with others. I knew there were other people out there like me who have created something out of a passion greater than themselves that maybe brought them joy. And maybe
mhm,
together we can inspire others that anything is possible.
absolutely. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I do trust that those roots are sort of leading me on a path towards what I believe is more joy, more passion in what I think I'm creating a personal brand almost by accident.
Hmm.
And you've gone from a career in tech to
Yeah.
one of creating a personal brand that stems from your passion for food.
Hmm.
And it's expanded into everything from TV to travel. What
Absolutely.
and how inspired this transition of your career towards more passion and joy?
It's definitely it's funny when people ask me about that, like, where is the through line and all of that, I think like a lot of people, I was when you're 17 years old, 16 years old, and you're trying to decide what the heck you want to do with the rest of your life, it feels impossible. And I was one of those classic kids, like good in math, good in science, be an engineer, like with no, didn't know a single engineer, anybody who worked in tech. And truly, even as a young kid, I loved cooking and recipes and food culture. I grew up in a really diverse area, and I was like that little girl in the kitchen with everyone's grandma, just asking, like, what are you making? Whether they were from the Dominican Republic or Greece or wherever in the world. And I would try anything. It just fascinated me. I was just drawn towards it. I cooked a lot with both my grandmas. They definitely inspired me in different ways. I wrote my first recipe at age 8, which is kind of telling and hilarious. So it was just sort of like this thing, this glimmer. It was just there. Yeah, it was my dad's mom would make this rhubarb crunch with rhubarb from a patch in our backyard. And in reflection, I'm like, what 8-year-old eats rhubarb, let alone like wants to learn how to cook with it and do a recipe with it? So I still have the little, it's on my website. I think I still have the little like greasy fingered recipe card. I think it uses margarine, but it was just something that called to me. So, I did the stable, my first job was in a manufacturing plant. I was a process engineer, and then I got a master's in tech. But truly the whole time I was working in restaurants. I would host or cater on the weekends. I would even help people open their restaurants while I was working in tech. And I really, really wanted to switch and work in it, but it was hard. For anyone out there who's listening or watching who's like, I'm making good money and I'm in this prestigious career, and it's fine. Like, it was fine. I was good at it, but it just didn't really, like you said, light me up. It wasn't the thing that was going to sustain me for my life. I just really wanted to do something that felt much more fun. So when my first daughter was born, and it wasn't a rethinking of my life with having a child. It happened to be timed with September 11th, but again, it wasn't a rethinking because of 9/11, which was awful. I worked in New York City. I live right outside New York, but it gave me the break I needed. So I think sometimes in life, even something bad or sad like 9/11, my company went under. I was pregnant with my first daughter. Um, I decided to stay home for a little bit. And my ex husband and I talked about it. And he's like, look, you've never loved what you've done. What if this is the break? Instead of paying for a nanny, what if this is the time when you career change? So that was the pivot point for me with that angle of my career. And I worked at the culinary school I went to in Manhattan to get free tuition to go there. So that was like a very great way to make the shift without feeling like, oh gosh, I already have a master's degree that I'm not using anymore. And now I'm going down this whole other path. And if I told you, and I've had friends apologize to me, at that point, I had friends, I had family members, even former clients almost doing interventions on me. Like, what are you doing? You can't, like, why are you doing this? And I was like, it will work out. Like, I just had to kind of, and trust me, like, there were plenty of moments of doubt or grappling with, like, what am I doing? Is this okay? That I'm going down a path that's less conventional. But honestly, once I was in the field that I wanted to be in, it was like kid in candy store. Like, it never felt like work. It was just all exploration and fun. And I stayed really open-minded. I tried lots of different things. Like I would help cater, I would teach cooking classes. I did a lot of different, I let myself play. Maybe that's a better way to put it, right? Like I didn't go to culinary school saying, I know this is what I will do when I come out. I think there was one course I took within my school, and it was about recipe development. And honestly, I didn't even know that that was a gig or that was a thing that people did that. And this was in like 2010, so pre-Instagram, but definitely bloggers and, Facebook and things like that. People were posting recipes. And I knew people wrote cookbooks, but I was like, oh, wait, you mean brands need recipes? You mean outlets need recipes? So it was really just sort of listening to the things that sounded interesting to me. And, when you look back on that connection, it's like, well, that makes a lot of sense. You're an engineer, you're systemic, but yet you love food, you love cooking. Okay, I can see why you would be great at writing recipes, right? So that was kind of how that started. And coming out of school, I interned at Food Network and Saveur, which is a culinary culture, like a food travel magazine in New York City, and that really set me up. So I think too, the openness, like for anyone out there again who's grappling with this, I didn't graduate culinary school till I was 40. And then I was working in, at Food Network and at cooking magazines, really just letting myself enjoy this new playground and not letting a number define me. That's something I've never done.
What's interesting is when you were young, you said 8 or 9,
Hmm.
you developed or wrote that recipe with your grandmother, but you went through a career in tech for what you thought you should be doing. Like everybody thinks that they should go to college. I mean, college is great and important and was super fun. But because you thought maybe this is what you should be doing, I need to make money. I want to
Hmm.
live in New York. I need to have all the things, right, that are
Hmm.
important.
Right.
But, and then there was sort of this mind shift with an event that happened that might have inspired you to think differently. Like I know COVID, for me, that's when I created my cookbook, was during COVID,
Hmm.
when I had that
Lots of,
time
yeah.
to pause and
Hmm.
think about what's important, what do I want to do. And when my cousin suggested the idea of me to create the cookbook, she was sort of like, yeah, I think you should do this the way you put together the table and you host meals. And I joked around, I'm like, I don't know anything about making a cookbook and I have zero time. But I said, you know what? I'm not happy with my job and I want
Right.
to find a way out. And it shifted my mindset. And like you're saying, I'm 42 and it's like all of my friends are having babies and getting married and doing the thing. And I think maybe that's not my path. Like I'm happy to be pursuing my passion
Hmm.
and saying yes and trying all of these different paths towards maybe
Hmm.
more joy, more passion for what lights me up. Like I'm happy with doing that.
You know what's funny? It was truly something I always wanted to do. I just didn't know how to go about it. I was, oh man, if you looked back, it was like, Julie, you're like hostessing at a restaurant on weekends when you're making six figures traveling and being a tech consultant. And you're like, it was like I was just dabbling, dabbling, dabbling. And there's a phrase that I really like that I try to share with people and that I definitely have adopted. It's give yourself permission. Like, I think for a lot of us, we're waiting for some outside source to give us permission to go after what we want in life or do what we want in life. And the more you learn to be your own biggest fan and self advocate and give yourself permission to do the things that you want to do, and stop worrying so much about what everybody else around you thinks. Like, of course, the people that love you care about you. There are things like I was very blessed. I was married and I was on my ex husband's benefits, right? So I had health care. That was important. I was able to work it around my daughter's preschool and elementary school schedule. So we didn't have to spend a lot of money paying nannies. Like, there were ways where I got creative around it. And we made some financial changes. We didn't buy new cars or take big vacations during those years while I was building the new career in the culinary world. But it's funny. So once I got into the culinary world, I think another thing that's important is no matter what you're doing or anyone's doing, it actually all adds up and makes sense in reflection. Like, nobody can see what the story is, like how their path is unfolding and how all the things are going to tie together, but they really do when you do look back. And so for me, like, I don't regret at all having that business background, that consulting. Being a consultant is one of the best things to do right out of college, because you learn how to work with a lot of different personality types. You learn how to demonstrate that you're adding value to the project, and right, otherwise they won't need a consultant there. You learn how to always be adding value, how to think creatively, and also sometimes how to not get too immersed in what's going on, because you have that kind of consulting mindset about it. Like, how can we make it better? How can we change this? And when I got into the food world, that paid off in spades. I was working with companies like Bed Bath and Beyond and Weight Watchers and Real Simple and all these outlets that needed recipes, and then videos. You never could have told me I'd start doing videos and TV in my 40s again, like, it's just, I had no video or performing background at all, and clients saw that potential in me. So the thing that was cool, let me retie that thread, going from a consultant to working with brands creating content was just like a logical fit. Like, I was able also to go in and work with them and not just say, okay, you just need this one recipe from me. That's great. Thank you. I would say, oh, have you thought about, did you know that you could, I would always be bringing opportunities to the clients I worked with, which was me using my prior career skills in the new world. Right. And staying open too, and just saying, hey, you know what? If this client says they'd like to put me on video and they're willing to take a chance on me when I have absolutely no background in this, let me give it a shot. And if you saw if you saw some of my early videos, they are so cringy, right? This was like, again, pre-Instagram. I think now many of us have learned how to be on video because it's sort of more in our day-to-day with Reels and Instagram. But there's something that Oprah Winfrey, I got to hear her speak twice, which was amazing. So Weight Watchers corporate was a big client of mine. I created tons of content for them. I helped them launch wellness cruises. I did all these really, and again, that was the consulting mindset in me, always offering different ways to work with them and help them. So one day I was at Weight Watchers in New York City at their headquarters, and they said, oh, Oprah's here. It was when she had just bought in. I don't know if you knew, she was like on the board, and she bought Weight Watchers for a spell. And they said, just stick around after you're done, because like, she's apparently going to come out and speak to everybody here. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Right. So I wait, I'm in this like corporate lunchroom, and she comes out and she's got that Oprah, that way of speaking. And she's so calm and composed. And she just starts dropping all of these like incredible wisdom bombs on us all, just in a way of just a very casual way of speaking. And one of the things she said really stuck with me, and you used this word, and she said, you have to trust your path, and that it's unfolding exactly as it was meant to. Because we've we've all made mistakes. We've all spent too much time in a relationship that wasn't working, or a job that wasn't working, or friendship that wasn't working, or a behavior pattern, whatever it is, right? But if you go back and beat yourself up constantly, and you don't trust that that was guiding you towards something better, and keep going and aiming yourself towards something better for yourself, something that feels more aligned and more true to you, we're all, we're lost if we don't trust our path. And so, again, to you or anyone who's looking to make career shifts or make big life changes, like, I think one of the biggest things we all need to learn in life, it took me a long time, is how to listen to your own intuition. Like, what's really going to make me happy? What do I really need? At the end of the day, at the end of our lives, we have ourselves to answer for, right? To answer to.
I find that being open to people that come into our path to inspire us, like you, I never imagined doing video at all. Like, I had no interest. I didn't even imagine creating this podcast. Like, the
Hmm.
cookbook led me to this calling of just connecting with others. I'm like, okay, I want to have a conversation. Is it Instagram Live? No, let me do a podcast. I
Yeah.
started the podcast. The people that I started meeting, interviewing on the podcast, have inspired me and expanded my mind. And one of them in particular was a traveler who shot videos, and he was actually staying next door to me at my neighbor's house. And so I met him and I invited him over in person to do the interview. And I got this, just download this idea, like, let's do a cooking video together. It'd be really fun. And I
Hmm.
put it on YouTube, and that's what started this whole travel video. And now I do some videos of food experiences through travel, festivals, or
Hmm.
dinners, or whatever it is that I'm inspired by. And I didn't even have any interest in the
Right.
editing and putting it out there and any of it. I never would have imagined. Have you ever met anyone on your path that has helped you find your way?
Oh gosh, so many. Yeah. Well, Al Roker, I got to meet him. I started doing a lot
Really?
of I started doing a lot of TV, a lot of cooking on TV and things like that. And I got to meet him. And I said to him, I was like, so what makes a really good food cooking segment? Because I'm actually not doing as much like recipe video stuff anymore, but I had a YouTube show at the time, like cooking show. I was doing YouTube cooking videos for clients and lots of TV, bringing brands on air for TV. And again, with no media training or background, I probably should have invested in some, but that's okay. It was like it was all going fine. And I said, what makes a really good cooking segment? What do you think? And he's like, you know what? He goes, and he's got such a cool way about him. He's like, the world is hard and everyone's stressed out and everyone's watching the news, whatever's going on in the world. There's always something stressful on TV, on the news, and their personal lives, everything, there's just a lot. And if you can be the person that brightens someone's day through what you're doing. He's like, so don't get so hung up on what temperature to set the oven at, or if you said 5 minutes or 7 minutes, or if you really did it exactly right. He's like, make it fun for the viewer and fun for the anchor that you're on with, who's also got a life, who's stressed out. I think having empathy in the world can make a big difference too, right? Like we can go on TV and be like, oh gosh, what if I mess up? Everyone's going to be, or you can go on TV and go, oh, this person who's standing next to me got up at 4 a.m. They have little kids. They've been like trying to get ahead in a media career, which must be stressful for them, the people at home. And then when you apply that mindset to what you're doing of like, let me serve others, let me make this be fun for everyone, it just lifted everything for me. And I think after that, I started getting booked for even bigger and bigger shows and doing a lot more fun video. So he was very inspiring because it got me out of my own head and my perfectionism, right? To just enjoy it and let it be fun.
Totally.
And then to get into travel, it's funny you were talking about food travel and culinary travel. That's always been my jam. Like even when I was an engineer for my ex-husband and I would plan these elaborate trips for us and I took us to Spain when this was in like 2006. My girls were little. And I remember I just took us on this like wild goose chase that wasn't, because I found her. I'd read about this woman who quit life from, I'm going to say she was from Germany or Switzerland, and she moved to Spain. She loved cheese so much. She went to Barcelona. She opened this tiny cheese shop and she made friends with all the farmers like within a few hours and would buy their cheeses and age them in this cave in this tiny sliver of a shop. And I was obsessed with like going to find her and meet her and hear about how did you wind up doing this and try the cheeses. I brought wheels of cheese home. I hosted all these endless tapas parties for friends. Like for me, it's always been about connection with others in other places too. And like hearing their stories and learning about the place through the food and the food traditions and the way they use food to celebrate moments in life. It's people are people, and it's such a joy to find that kind of connection. So another very inspiring person who would actually be a great guest for you, my friend Allison Fleece. She has this amazing women's outdoor adventure travel company that she founded with a friend when she was in her 20s. I'd always loved travel. I was starting to help Weight Watchers create these wellness cruises. I was hosting them, and I saw a lot of people that wanted to travel that didn't have the right niche. People were overwhelmed trying to plan their trips. I would go on a trip. Like I took my now fiance to Portugal for his birthday, and I had this whole thing planned out. And people were like, how do you know where to go and find these cool things and do all these cool food experiences when you travel? So Allison helped me start up my culinary travel business. So now for the last 3 years, I've been bringing small groups of people with me around the world to really cool places. And we meet the chef, we meet the winemaker, we make the cheese, we make the pasta, we also enjoy just like the good things, the culture. And it's really important to me that when I create these trips and host them, that I'm hosting in a small group and we're supporting other fellow women entrepreneurs, family run businesses, artisans, like going to meet them directly versus just hitting all the tourist traps. So that's been such a joy. And it started as just like one trip, then two, and now I'm hosting and offering them all around the globe in Italy, Ecuador, Galapagos. Morocco is coming. I'm going to be adding Japan. I'm going to just keep adding locations as I go. And in between there, we were talking earlier about just saying yes and giving things a shot before someone else tells you you're ready or you really even think you're ready. People started saying to me, I can't go with you on that trip to Italy, but my family's doing a reunion. Could you help us plan that? Because you have so many connections there. You've been traveling throughout this area to meet all these cool local providers. So within a year, I started doing private trip planning too, because now I have all these connections in places, and I know how to put a really meaningful, cool, fun, fulfilling trip together. So just keep following what it is that is lighting you up, that people need, that's fun for you. To be really honest, I over about a 10-year span, I think I wrote like 2,000 recipes. I got burnt out on it. It was sort of like in 2021. And it wasn't even, it's funny how these things happen. It wasn't like the pandemic made me rethink the cooking thing. It was going great. Everything was great. It was actually ironically that three main clients had major shifts in budget and what they were doing. And the work wasn't even there anymore. And I was like, okay, I could lament that and complain and be like, poor me, wah, and like run around trying to find new clients. Or I could take this as that break to think about what would I really want to do now, and maybe take that mini break as an opportunity to go in another direction. Like I think sometimes the universe, the world, life is like sort of almost nudging you like it's time. Like I was already at a point where I was a little bit burnt out on it. So it's been such a joy to shift into culinary travel over the last few years. And I turned 55. I'm a big age embracer. I think aging is a gift, actually, because I've lost friends way too young, and I think that for a lot of women, they limit themselves by their age, or they are afraid to talk about it. And I'm like, you know what? Who would have thought I would start another whole angle of my business, a whole company in my 50s? And it's so much fun. I'm headed to Morocco this week. I'm celebrating my birthday in Morocco, and I'll be creating
Oh,
new trips there.
happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah.
I do believe we're sent things at the perfect time. I lost my job last year as
Mm,
I just launched the podcast and I was interviewing all these entrepreneurs. And I thought to myself, if I'm interviewing them and they can create a business out of their passion, that I
yeah.
can do that too.
Hmm.
And I felt this calling to go back to the village in Italy where my grandfather was born. And I hadn't been back since the 90s when my grandfather brought us all there.
So
And I don't
cool.
know, I just felt this calling. I said, as an extension of my cookbook, I want to go back and immerse myself in the food culture of my heritage, of my last name, and
Hmm.
really understand the roots of the food culture
Hmm.
and where I come from. And I went, and it was so transformational for me
So cool.
that for the last year, I really wanted to go back to design a retreat, to bring
Yeah.
people to share the joy that I felt and the
Yeah.
transformation that I felt being there, just learning
Hmm.
to slow down, immersing myself in
Hmm.
the culture. I cooked with people in their homes, like in my cousins. They didn't know me. They opened their homes.
Right.
They
Yeah.
didn't speak the language. I cooked with my cousin. She does not speak any English.
Yeah.
And we're literally like, I'm like, Ashbet, Ashbet, I give you a measuring cup. We got to measure that,
Right.
And
Right.
I went back a couple weeks ago and with my cousin who lives there, and we're hosting our very first retreat.
Congrats. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. And is it going to be in that region, or are you
It's
moving around
it's
Italy?
going to be exactly in that town. It's
So
going to
cool.
be for 4 days, 3 nights. It's centered around the festival that the town has. The longest running festival of Caserta,
Oh,
actually.
wow.
And it's deeply rooted in their ancestral heritage of food.
That's so fun.
And it's really cool. And when I went back, I went to this festival to sort of, take clips and what could this retreat look like for people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want to make sure they have enough to do, but I want to make sure it's not too long where they're just immersed like, okay, I'm in this local area. And it's very
Right. It's
shell
hard.
shock.
It's like making a mixtape. I joke when you're like creating a trip or an experience. It's like not too much, but not enough, and not, you know what I mean? And
Right.
striking that right high, that like
Right.
balance. It really is a
Right.
balance when you're creating a trip or creating a retreat or a vacation, whatnot.
Well, you
That's so
ask
cool.
yourself, like what I wanted to ask you is
Yeah.
you ask yourself, what do you hope someone will experience with their
Mm.
travels? Because
Mm.
I always like off the beaten path travel. Now, not everyone is like me, but I want to
Mhm.
immerse myself in a culture and understand how they live. I want to understand their authenticity. And
Right.
I love food. So for
Yeah.
me, that's how the retreat is going to be designed.
That's so
What do you
cool.
think people should experience during their travels?
Oh gosh, yeah. I've always known travel as a gift, that it opens your mind, it like connects us, it shows us how small we are really in our problems with context of the whole world, and yet also how we're all the same, like people are all the same. So it's funny. Sometimes I host women's only tours, and I do find that a lot of the women that come are going through things like a divorce or an illness or a loss of a parent. I feel like I have a lot of women travelers who come with me who are at that like phase of life, like empty nest, and they're kind of grappling with a lot of things. And I give them often like a little manifestation card and just say like keep your mind open this week and be be extra aware. I think we're more open when we travel because we're out of our element. Like we're almost on our back foot because we maybe don't speak the language, we don't know how to get where we're going. We now granted on my tours I'm bringing people, but you're still like in a different, especially if you don't travel a lot, you're still in a different energy and vibe. And it could be anything from, oh my gosh, I need more nature in my life. Sitting out here staring at these Tuscan vineyards and just relaxing on a patio made me realize like I don't spend enough time outside and I want to bring that back to my day-to-day life. It could be on my recent Tuscany trip, a woman who had just lost both of her parents in the year prior, and she came with her sister, and they promised themselves that they would go back to Italy after this. And we were on a farm learning about making cheese and talking to the cheesemaker who runs the farm. And it turns out he loves disco and he's hilarious. He used to bring his wheels of cheese to the disco to get free dance lessons. And so then we're in this, like, this is a funny story. We're in this tiny town right near the farm later at this cool wine bar that I bring everyone to. I know the husband and wife who own it. They're like these really cool wine collectors. It's like a total gem in Tuscany, in Volterra. And the cheesemaker shows up and you're like, okay, we can't make this up. Like, how did he, but everyone knows everyone in this area of Italy. So I turn around and he's in Italian singing like some really terrible disco song and dancing with one of the sisters. And she's just so lit up and laughing. I think that, so an example there is like finding joy, and especially finding joy with like people you've never met before around the world can light you up and you'll have this memory for life. I've had other people travel with me and they've now granted it's a culinary tour, but we do lots of things. We'll go visit a potter. We'll do a painting class. Like I want people, like you said, to immerse themselves in the culture. And I'll have people say like, why don't I paint? Why don't I take painting lessons I think that when we're on vacation and we're traveling, we are just more open, a little bit more open-minded maybe. And then how do I bring those aha moments back into my day-to-day life?
Totally. And talking about the festival that was happening in this town, I went to the
Yeah.
festival. There were so many different food stands. And I looked at one, they had gnocchi and snail sauce, such
Sure.
interesting real culinary
Yeah.
things. And one of the foods was called pizza fritta, which we call, and I know you have it in New Jersey, called pizzelles. It's fried dough,
Oh, yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sauce, and cheese. I thought my entire life this was an Italian American iteration from, ancestors that have come over from
Right.
Italy. They decided to make some fried something and serve it at the back of the church for the festival.
Mhm.
My grandmother used to make it. She had a recipe. She used to make it for us. And when
So
I
cool.
was at this festival and I looked at it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm really from here.
Yeah.
You just have this realization. Have you ever
Mhm.
experienced that during your travels? Something that's reminded you of your roots?
Oh gosh, for sure. My grandma, but my grandparents, the Italian grandparents, were very, very big in my life when I was a little girl. They helped raise me, and he's from Italy, from right outside Naples, and she actually wasn't. He was a lot older than her, not a lot, but like 8, 10 years, enough that his older sisters taught her to cook for him because he was the baby boy in the Italian family, right? We got to take care of grandpa. And I learned to cook a lot with that grandma. And the first time I went to Italy with my ex in '99, we were in Siena. And I remember staying at some tiny hotel and I just said, where should we go to dinner? And I asked, this is a tip for everyone who loves to travel. Like, don't always go by the guidebooks and the bloggers. Like, ask the locals. They'll tell you where the cool places are. They'll tell you the places that nobody else knows about. So I think it was somebody working in the hotel, not even the front desk, was just like, oh, yeah, 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 go to this compo, not the main one. Go to this back one, this back one, this back one, and knock on this door. There won't be a sign. And we were like, what? And, this is way pre, like, what's a speakeasy? And it wasn't. It was literally just some Nona's house. And you knock on the door. She's like this big and she just takes us in and everybody just looks. They're all local. There's like 6 tables in there, no menu. We sit down and she just fed us. And it was like more, more, more. And like, it was one of the most epic food memory. I think that for me anyway, because food is such a thing for me. I've made so many amazing food memories, but I just loved that whole vibe of like, oh, this is someone's sweet grandma who just wants to see everybody enjoy her recipes and like that whole cultural thing. So, but I also think when you travel the world and you're open and joyful and you just want to connect and learn from others, you can find meaning and you can find memories of home like everywhere you go, right? Whether it's someone who reminds you of your grandma or someone who reminds you of your like funny uncle or someone who reminds you of your friend. Like it's just that reminder again that we're all humans having this experience all around the globe, wherever we live, whatever we're going through. And for me, food culture has always been one of those connectors.
Totally. And like you talked about earlier, connection, creating connection with others. It's why have this podcast. I invite people who I want to connect with and learn from. Travel, I connect with people. You're talking about connecting with, the locals and learning about their culture. And I find myself sharing more on social media. I never would have imagined, again, going back to like a personal brand,
Yeah.
creating a brand around myself. I was scared to put myself out there. I hated my own voice. Talking about someone
Oh.
who has a podcast, I could not do a video or talk or get myself out there. Like I had anxiety.
Hmm.
And once I started to do markets and share my cookbook story, and I started to share cooking videos on Instagram, people would comment like, "Oh, you have such a pretty voice." And I was like, "Really?"
Like, do
I was
I?
shocked
Yeah.
by that.
Yeah.
And I post something to share and connect with others and create a community. Just like I'm having this podcast, I'm creating a community.
Right.
And then the algorithm changes and someone may not see my post,
Yeah.
or maybe they don't like the post, or it doesn't have a catchy phrase, or it doesn't have the music, or it doesn't have this, that, and the other thing. It doesn't get pushed and then people don't see it. Or
Mhm.
how do we stay true to ourselves in today's social media culture while still creating that connection?
No, it's definitely, trust me. I have a lot of, this is an idea for you and anyone out there who's going out on their own and building their own business. It's really important in your real world life and on Instagram. I have Instagram friends. Like I have people I've never met who I'm friends with on Instagram, who I talk with and DM with, and like we support each other's businesses. It's really important to surround yourself with people who are also entrepreneurs, who are grappling with the same things. Because if you have, say, friends or people in your social circles who only use social media to like peep other people's like kid pictures or vacation pictures, and you're trying to use it to grow a business, they can, I have to say, like sometimes people in your day-to-day life can be kind of triggering, where you're like, and it makes you play small. You're like, oh yeah, like why are you always videoing? What are you doing? Why are you posting? Like they don't understand, right? So number one, to have a healthy relationship with Instagram and all social media is to form a supportive group of fellow entrepreneurs who are also using it, who can help you stay balanced with it. I think number two is that, we don't control much in our lives, really, including algorithms, including how people perceive our content. It's minimizing how much external validation you're looking for in all ways, right? Like do what, if you're putting a message out that you believe in, and just trusting that it doesn't matter. Like maybe your last post got, I'm going to make up numbers, 100 likes, and this one only got 50. That's still 50 humans who like gave you a high five and took a time out of their day to bother to, right? And we can instead, it's almost like social media is, it can be like a microcosm of how we feel about ourselves in other areas of our lives. If we fall into comparison culture, you don't need Instagram to feel like you're comparing. You can see your friend who, whatever it is they did that triggered you a little bit or made you feel a little icky inside, and or like a little bit sad about yourself inside. That's prone to happen in your personal life or on social media. So it's almost like truly like doing that kind of personal development work in different ways, and realizing like, you know what, like I just have to trust, again, like trust that I'm following the path I want to be following. I'm going towards my own joy. I'm trying to do good in the world, and it will all play out the way it's supposed to, right? Like there are a lot of ways to market your business and get messages out there beyond like just social media. I think the other thing, and this is like this is the tech girl Julie talking now. They design these apps to be addictive.
Mm.
Like they designed them to be addictive, and I think the more we as adults can like really remember that, like all of us, we get a serotonin hit when we see something. That's why we look down on our phones and go like that and look up and we're like, whoa, where was I? It's like an hour later and you're like, what did I just do? I was watching like my daughters and I sent each other guinea pig reels and TikToks because we used to have guinea pigs together. And like, I'll be like, whoa, that was a waste of an hour. But also I think it's important to pay attention to how you feel after you've done that. Because often you feel a little bit like, I don't know, it's almost like when you like snacked mindlessly and then you feel a little gross, like you sometimes feel a little out of it. Or maybe you do feel like something you looked at got you a little upset. Maybe you were served up something that was either, like, I'll use the word triggering again, or depressing, or whatever it is. So I really think it's important, especially for any of us who are using it as part of our business and growing personal brands on there, to create a healthy foundation of support system around us, and also to just constantly remind yourself, like, it's meant to be addictive. It's not the only way to market your business. It doesn't determine your 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 quality as a human, the quality of your business, or your thoughts. It's just a platform. I also, and this is a tip for anyone who can, I have the most incredible assistant who works with me, Karen. She's incredible. If she was listening to this, like, I hope I tell her enough. But I've actually offloaded quite a bit of social media as something that she's doing. And I find it, I don't know if this happens to you, but when I would be going to edit a reel and trying to choose the clips, I would get up in my own head, like, oh, you look silly in that one. Oh, that one's not. Oh, that's not. And letting someone else do it. Like, other people see the good and the positives in us often more readily than we do. And we can get up in our own heads about things. So letting her edit things together for me, I'm like, oh gosh, thank you. It would have taken me 2 hours longer than you because I would have overthought every step. So I think too, as business owners, it's our job to think about, what are ways I can avoid situations where I am going to get up in my own head and get in my own way. We have to get it out of our own way.
Totally. And how else can we market outside of social media? I think, I know there's YouTube, and I struggle with this because I obviously have my retreat and I'm
Hmm.
marketing it obviously on social media,
Yeah.
posting the thing. And, there's also this piece of making money from our passions. I'm passionate
Hmm.
about sharing this retreat experience.
Sure.
I'm passionate about my podcast. But you have to build, there's a foundation. You have
Yeah.
to build on that. And it doesn't happen overnight. And it's
No.
patience and it's trust.
Hmm.
How do you
Well,
think we can market outside of social media and also make money from what we're passionate about?
yeah. Well, yes, there's Instagram, there's TikTok, of course, but like, I think also it's always think about, like, how do I make decisions to go to something? Like, if you've ever gone to a retreat in your past that's totally different of some sort of trip, like, who told you about it? What got you? I think like going down the path of like the person that you're trying to attract to your business, right? With your marketing, going down the path as if you were them and say, like, what would make me, like, who would be the person that would tell me? And a lot of times, like you're saying, it's word of mouth. And, we forget that live events, speaking at events, networking events, small business owner events, asking friends to reshare. I'm not a big Facebook fan. It's just is what it just is. However, a lot of people do hang out on there, and asking people you wouldn't think of to post. Or I've posted things into like alumni networks that I was in from my engineering school, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, look what you're doing. How cool." And then they were supporting my business or telling their next door neighbor to come, because for something intimate to me, like travel or a retreat, they probably need to feel some sort of connection to you, right? It's a trust thing to travel with somebody. It really is. Until you or I, and I'm actually not even gunning to build a company that's like this big, massive thing. Like, I want it to be like, oh, you're traveling with me, with Julie. You get to know me. We're going to hang out. We're going to have so much fun. It's like a moving dinner party. So I would say, like, I know we have these tools at our fingertips and they're free, but there's so many other ways that are more personal to market. And like I said, tapping into your network, then making money at what you do. So, you know, I do think it's important to figure out, like, what do people need and want? How can I help them with my talent? So it's like, I think sometimes as creatives, we're like, but I made this thing and I want people to pay me for it. And it's like, well, but how can what I like and what I know help other people so that they would want to pay me for it? Because it's like money is like energy exchange, really, right? Like, you're buying an experience or support or, something that's going to add to your life. So whatever the topic is, doing that kind of analysis. Again, you could do cooking classes, you could do catered experiences in people's homes, you could go down the YouTube route and look for sponsors. You could look for there's so it's like if you're looking for sponsors, you're like, okay, well, what brands would be interested in what I'm doing? And also the people that I'm sharing my content with, the brand wants to get in front of. And then your energy exchanges with the brand because you're like, oh, well, I'll help you get more attention from this community of people that love authentic Italian recipes, right? I don't know. So it's like there is no one answer to it. I think it's doing multiple things to make money is actually a good idea instead of having all your eggs in one basket. So, I'm hosting group trips. People come on trips with me. I'm planning trips for people. So that's a separate thing. I bring brands on air still. I represent brands. I do content creation for brands. So like, I'm open to doing live events if it's the right situation and the right client. So like, if you think about it that way, I have 5 or 6 different things at my fingertips. So I can, depending on how things are going, as an entrepreneur, you have to stay nimble and open-minded and not just have one thing that's the only thing that you sell and do. Because then if that's not working out, we can start to beat ourselves up and feel really down on ourselves. It's good to be able to shift.
Right. And what do you think defines a personal brand? And how does someone go about creating one? Because I know
Yeah.
it didn't even cross my mind, right? Of
Yeah.
creating one.
Yeah. It took me a while to actually embrace it. I was like, I remember saying, I'm a businesswoman. I write recipes for companies. I don't want to deal with this. And this was like back in Blogger era. Like, but I saw that some of the corporate clients I was working with who loved me and loved my work, they thought I was great. They were starting to give deals to people that had built like usually bloggers who had built like a presence for themselves. And I was like, wait a minute, like I went to culinary school, I've got all this experience and what can I be doing differently? Like I'm losing deals. Like I'm not getting some of the things that I would normally be getting. And then I said, okay, let me think about at that point, I branded myself. Actually, I was cooking with Julie for a while. I was on TV and video and all of this. And it was just like, oh, let me put the cooking word next to I think I was still learning what a personal brand was, if you want to know the truth. So the cooking with Julie thing was me being like, okay, well, I'm sharing healthy recipes, but they're fun because I'm a fun person. I was trying to find that blend. And then a few years ago, I actually went back and everywhere now, anyone who's listening or watching, I'm just Julie Hartigan. It's juliehartigan.com, at Julie Hartigan. And my personal brand is me. There is no like, who am I angling to? What am I doing? I'm just like, I'm going to showcase the life of an empty nester, divorced mom of 2 daughters who was an engineer, then a chef, content creator, now doing travel. I obviously talk about what I'm offering, right? Because that's part of it. But the brand is the ideal situation is that your brand is you. Like, I think too, embracing what makes us unique as humans and making that be our personal brand, those little differentiators, um, that makes all the difference because it's important to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Work with people who understand branding and like colors and fonts and how things look and like always show up with the same messaging in mind everywhere you are. And doing a lot of deep diving into who am I trying to talk to? Like, who is the ideal? And I think too, when you talk about like your ideal customer or client or whatnot, it's like I more go for a vibe because like you heard me say several times, I'm like, people are people. I love humans. So like even with my trips, I started as women only. Now I'm like, everyone is welcome. Like if you're fun and you love people and you love exploring the world and you're an open-minded like person, just come travel with me and we're all gonna have a great time together. I want to create that kind of community. So
I think the
yeah.
hardest thing for anyone is understanding yourself, doing the work and really understanding
Hmm.
who am I? What lights me up? What brings me
Hmm.
joy? Right? Because there's a lot of conditions that we're taught growing up that we bury
Oh
all
yeah.
things that we want to really truly do or who we truly are.
So
And then
true.
there's fear that keeps us from being ourselves. Like, what will
Hmm.
they think if I share that or do this?
Yeah.
Like you said,
Yeah.
surround yourself with people that are inspiring you and
Hmm.
expanding your mind, which is
Hmm.
really important,
And
right?
embrace your weird a little bit. Like we're all weird. Everyone's weird. Every single human being is weird. And like there's something about us that's unique or different or quirky. And like trying to emulate or pretend or to adopt a persona that we think we're supposed to have, you're not going to be able to like hold that up. It's going to show. Like people can tell. Like you can tell. And I think also, again, like flip it, kind of like what Al Roker said or whatnot, like flip it and be like, well, who do I like to follow? Like, what brands do I attach to and what about them draws me in? And like, think about that with respect to yourself, right? Like, well, what about me would be like, we know what I'm saying? Like, and usually the things that appeal to you are also characteristics you have. So you can think about how you can infuse your own brand with that.
Totally. Totally. I love all of that. So tell everybody how they can find your trips, follow you, collab with you.
For sure, definitely. And anyone who's an entrepreneur, like, trust me, I'm your girl. Like, I'll be like the positive voice in your ear. That's been quite the journey to like find that right group of people. So I'm Julie Hartigan, and it's HART as in Thomas, IGAN, juliehartigan.com, at Julie Hartigan. And that's really, I'm everywhere just with my name to make it really simple for people. And I have a lot of really cool trips coming up. Like I said, Morocco is going to be the newest destination, and then Japan coming soon. And if anyone out there needs a really amazing trip planned for yourself, just reach out and I'll hook you up. I've been doing a lot of really dreamy honeymoons lately, which are so fun.
Oh, I love that. And Morocco is on my list. So
Yeah,
I'm going to keep an
you'll have
eye
to
out.
come. And when is your retreat? I'm so excited for you. This is
It's
exciting.
next September. Next September, it'll be the weekend after Labor Day because it's always around the town festival.
Yeah.
And it's going to be amazing. We're going to cook in my cousin's house. We're going to
So
go to the
cool.
festival.
Ah,
It'll just be very immersive. We're going to go to a local flea market
yeah.
and it'll just be very immersive.
Well, I hope your retreat is a huge success, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners and viewers will be joining you, and it's going to be so amazing. And there's so many Italian Americans from that region too, and it's kind of a cool path that I think a lot of people are like, oh wow, like I think our generation is feeling more and more removed from those grandparents and great grandparents, and
Yeah.
it's wanting that connection back to like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, where am I from? Like, where
Yeah.
were they from, right? Because we're all just
Totally.
all big bunch of mutts now, so
Totally.
yes, that's really special that you're doing that. I know it's
Really.
going to be
I'm
really
so
meaningful
excited
and
to share.
amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was such a joy to get to talk to you. And yeah, and thank you for what you put out in the world. Really, it's important that you're sharing your message and uplifting people with this podcast and your work.